Mornings in Siem Reap move slowly, not because nothing is happening, but because life doesn't rush here unless it has to. We spent most of the day wandering, eating, and doing ordinary things, and that feels important, because not every day on the road is meant to be monumental. In the afternoon, we left the city behind and followed the road towards the water. The buildings thin out quickly, and concrete gives way to dust. Shops turn into fields. It doesn't feel like heading towards a destination. It feels like crossing a line, like the day is about to turn into something else. When the boat pulls into the mangroves, everything slows down immediately. The air feels heavier, cooler, and more contained. Roots rise out of the water, twisting and crossing, holding land together, in a place that never fully settles. This isn't land, it isn't lake, it's something in between, and you feel that in your body the moment you enter it. As the boat moves deeper in, the mangroves begin to close around us. The water narrows, the roots thicken, and the path stops being obvious. Nothing here moves in straight lines. You move at the pace the water allows, as if you're being guided by something that already knows the way. Mangroves are one of the most productive ecosystems on Earth. They protect coastlines, filter water, and create nurseries for fish before they ever reach open water. They're quiet infrastructure, doing essential work without being asked to be noticed. Mangroves don't grow where conditions are stable. They grow where the water levels rise and fall, where salt and fresh water mix, where nothing stays predictable for long. Instead of resisting that instability, they adapt to it. Their roots spread wide and they anchor in uncertainty. There's something quietly instructive about that. Eventually, the village comes into view. Kampong Phluk, built not beside the water, but with it. Homes lifted high on wooden stilts, boats tied where streets will be later in the year. Daily life shaped entirely around the flood cycle. For part of the year, this place is dry, dusty, grounded. And then the rain comes and the water rises, sometimes several meters high. Instead of resisting that reality, people adapted. They built upward, they waited, and they learned the water's patterns. But being here wasn't simple. It wasn't comfortable, and I don't think it was meant to be. Moving through the village, I felt a quiet tension. Not because anyone made us feel unwelcome. They didn't. They were so welcoming and kind. But because I suddenly was very aware of why I was there. A visitor, passing through and looking in. And I didn't know where to put that feeling. And there's a strange discomfort that comes when you realize you're witnessing someone else's daily life as an experience. Their home, their routines, their reality. And you're here because you can afford to be. And I kept asking myself, am I helping by being here? Or am I part of the problem? Does this kind of tourism support the community? Or does it turn real lives into something consumable? I don't have clean answers. We tipped well, we moved respectfully, and we listened. But that doesn't dissolve the imbalance, and maybe it shouldn't. There's a legacy here that doesn't disappear just because our intentions are good. A history of outsiders moving through places like this, naming, observing, taking stories with them. Colonialism doesn't always look dramatic. Sometimes it looks like curiosity. Sometimes it looks like travel. Sometimes it looks like someone behind a camera trying to understand. And I don't think the lesson is to feel guilty or to turn away. I think the lesson is to stay awake, to let the discomfort do its work, to resist the urge to make it tidy or inspirational. Because this place isn't a metaphor. It's not an aesthetic. It's a living community responding intelligently to the reality that they're in. And that deserves more admiration. It deserves honesty. Later that night, back at the hotel, we talked about it, all of us. That feeling we couldn't shake. That sense of not knowing where to stand with it. And that's exactly where we're supposed to be. Not resolved, not reassured, just aware. This isn't a story about poverty. It's a story about adaptation, dignity, and complicated ethics of witnessing a world that isn't yours. Sitting with that felt just as important as anything else we saw that day. As we move back through the mangroves, everything becomes very quiet. Voices soften and movement slows, and suddenly the smallest sounds start to matter. Birdsong somewhere overhead, the gentle rhythm of the paddle moving us forward through the water, leaves brushing against each other as we pass. It's the kind of quiet that asks nothing from you. It just lets you be there. I remember listening closely, not to just the world around us, but to my own thoughts, watching them slow down, watching them stop reaching for meaning or answers or conclusions. There was something deeply humbling about sitting in that stillness, about realizing how rarely we let the world speak without interrupting it. We leave the mangroves behind, not suddenly, but decisively. The paddle keeps moving and the river straightens out. The walls of green begin to fall away. The light changes again. It breaks through from the side now, cutting across the water and catching the tops of trees. Instead of surrounding us, we're no longer inside the quiet, but we're moving through it. The river feels wider here, more directional and less intimate, like it knows where it's going. But there's a subtle shift in the body. That sense of stillness loosens. Attention moves outward again. We're heading somewhere now, not wandering and not pausing, following the current towards something larger. Ahead, the river keeps widening. The edges blur and the banks pull farther apart. And you can feel it before you can really see it, that we're leaving one world and approaching another, almost without warning, and the horizon begins to flatten. Land feels farther away and the river stops behaving like a river. And that's when it hits you. This isn't opening into a lake. It's the opening into something that feels much bigger than that. Suddenly, there's no edge anymore, and the water stretches outward in every direction. All at once, you realize what you're standing inside of. This isn't a lake in the way we usually mean it. It feels like an ocean. It was the first thing we said, almost instinctively. Oh my God, this looks like an ocean. Not because it's dramatic, but because it's massive. Because your eyes don't know where to land. This is Tonle Sap, the largest freshwater lake in Southeast Asia, and the beating heart of Cambodia. What makes Tonle Sap extraordinary isn't just its size, it's how it moves. This lake expands and contracts with the seasons, more dramatically than almost any body of water on Earth. During the monsoon rains, it grows several times its size. Forests disappear beneath the surface and fields flood. Entire landscapes change shape. And then, incredibly, the Mekong River reverses its flow. Instead of carrying water away to the sea, it pushes water inland, feeding this lake. When the rains end, everything drains back out again. The lake recedes. The land reappears. Life reorganizes itself around retreat. Millions of people depend on this cycle, not metaphorically, literally. Tonle Sap supports one of the most productive inland fisheries in the world. Fish breed in the flooded forests, nutrients spread across the floodplain, food systems rise and fall with the water. This lake doesn't just sustain life, it teaches it. Standing here, it becomes clear that Tonle Sap isn't about permanence, it's about rhythm. Expansion, contraction, arrival, release. There's something deeply humbling about witnessing a system that only works because it refuses to stay the same. Here, stability isn't about control, it's about responsiveness. Spiritually, this place feels ancient. not because it's old, but because it remembers. It holds the memory of countless seasons, countless lives, countless returns. Water has always been sacred in this part of the world, not as an abstract idea, but as a lived reality. Water is time here. Water is survival. Water is the thing everything else organizes itself around. Watching the lake stretch endlessly outward, I felt that truth land in my body. How small we are inside systems this large. How arrogant it is to believe we can dominate them. How much wiser it might be to learn how to move with them instead of against them. The surface of the lake stays calm, even knowing it will change again. It doesn't cling to fullness, it doesn't resist loss, it trusts the cycle. Gold spills across the surface. Reflections stretch long and soft. The lake doesn't perform the sunset. It receives it. Being on the water at this hour feels different than watching from land. You're not above anything. You're not observing from a distance. You're level with it, held by the same surface that's reflecting the sky back at you. There's no hierarchy here, just shared space. In the story of the churning of the ocean milk, this feels unmistakable. The cosmic ocean. The place where creation and dissolution happen together. Where movement itself is the sacred act. This lake doesn't need temples. It is one. As the sun continues its slow descent, the colors deepen. Gold fades to pink and pink into blue. And eventually the light releases the water. Out here, endings don't feel final. They're cyclical. Like everything is simply preparing to return in another form. Tonle Sap doesn't promise certainty. It promises continuation. And maybe there's a deeper lesson. You don't need to hold on. You don't need to control the tide. You don't need to learn when to expand and when to let go. As we turn back down the river, the lake slowly releases us. The water narrows and the horizon pulls in. Movement becomes directional again. Not expansive, but purposeful. This is the part of the journey that doesn't get much attention. Not the arrival, not the awe, but the return. In the story of the churning of the ocean of milk, this is where we actually are. Not at the beginning, not at the reward, but in the middle. The gods and the demons don't churn the ocean once and receive clarity. They pull, and they pull, and they pull again. The ocean turns violent and poison rises first, before any nectar appears. The myth is very clear about this. Transformation isn't clean. It's tiring, it's destabilizing, and it takes time. Standing on Tonle Sap, it's easy to romanticize the water. But this lake doesn't offer comfort on demand. It floods entire landscapes. It recedes without apology. It reorganizes life again and again. And only after that does abundance follow. That feels important to carry back with us, because so often we want the beauty without the disruption, the insight without uncertainty, the reward without the work. But the churning doesn't work that way. You don't get to skip the middle. As the boat moves steadily forward, there's a strange steadiness in that realization. That feeling unsettled isn't a sign you're doing something wrong. It's a sign that something is moving. The water keeps flowing beneath us, even as it narrows. It doesn't stop. It just changes shape. By the time we leave the river behind and step back onto land, the body already knows this. That the work doesn't end when the scenery changes. Back in Siem Reap, life resumes at full volume. Traffic, voices, music spilling into the street. Lights flicker on and food sizzles fast and loud. The city doesn't pause to let you process anything. The sacred doesn't stay contained in lakes or temples. It follows you back into movement, into heat, into noise. Walking through the streets again, I could feel the contrast in my body. the quiet of the water still humming underneath the rush of the city. Nothing felt resolved, but something felt shifted. Like the ground had subtly moved without asking for permission. This episode was never meant to explain the myth. It was meant to place us inside it. Inside the effort, inside the motion, inside the uncertainty. The churning has started and we're still pulling. This isn't a travel vlog. It's a story about what happens when something ancient starts moving again. About water that floods and disappears, about temples built to mirror the universe, and about being pulled into a process you don't fully understand yet. This is Cambodia, and this is the churning of the ocean of milk, told in the modern world. If you're curious where the story goes, if you feel that pull too, stay with me. Like this video, subscribe, and tell me in the comments what part of the journey you're most drawn to, because this is only the beginning.